We'll look at today the purposes of criminal law. I'm going to refer to these purposes as correctional philosophies because that expands into the idea of actual punishment rather than just the purpose of having the law itself. Of course, we know having a law without punishment would be relatively worthless, words on a paper, but it's important to focus on the idea of actual punishment attached to the law. The first philosophy that we're going to talk about is deterrence, and there are two types of deterrence: general deterrence and specific deterrence. Deterrence works on the idea that if you increase the punishment, make the result of a criminal committing an offense worse than the reward they get from committing the offense, that they'll be less likely to commit the crime. General deterrence works as an example to the rest of society. We punish an individual for committing a burglary by giving them a prison sentence or a term on probation, and then society is able to look at that punishment and see the cost of committing that crime and determine for themselves whether they want to take that risk. So what we would look at for general deterrence is the punishment of one to set an example for the rest of society. Specific deterrence works when you punish an individual for the actions that he has committed in hopes to deter him from repeating that behavior or committing similar actions in the future. So if you punish an individual for committing a burglary, you are showing him what the punishment for that offense is. He's experiencing the punishment, and then he would be less likely to commit the action or repeat the behavior in the future if the punishment is harsh enough. Another type of correctional philosophy is rehabilitation. The philosophy behind rehabilitation is that people's behavior, or the criminal in particular, the behavior needs to be modified, changed in some way. In a modern example of a rehabilitative program, we would look at someone with a substance abuse problem, look at that as possible causation or at least strong correlation with their criminality, and hope that through a rehabilitative program attached to their punishment, they would cure themselves of their addiction, which cures themselves of their criminality. Rehabilitative programs are very important for a lot of society because not everyone is just making the conscious desire or the conscious decision to commit a crime because it would be good for them as far as rewards, and then other people are not because of the punishment. Some people are not necessarily in control of their behavior to the full extent of an ordinary person. So we have drug addiction, we have lack of opportunity through low income, academic failure, we have impulse control issues, we have mental illness, a wide range of things that can be built into a rehabilitative program. So if we look at a program whose goal is to rehabilitate, they should be geared in this direction, finding or diagnosing the problem with the offender and drawing up a treatment plan to fix that problem. Another type of correctional philosophy is retribution, also sometimes referred to as just desserts. Sometimes it's easier to think about retribution as a punishment for the sake of punishing. Offender does behavior X, they receive punishment X. We have no other end goal in mind. We're not trying to rehabilitate necessarily. We're not trying to deter necessarily. And if those goals are accomplished, that's just great. But we're going to punish for the sake of punishing. What rehabilitation and deterrence have as a kind of a side note, I suppose, is the theoretical possibility that if an offender didn't need to be rehabilitated, then he wouldn't need the punishment in the first place. And retribution kind of takes that away and says it doesn't matter if you need the punishment to be deterred or to be rehabilitated. You did the crime, so you're going to do the time, as it were. The last correctional philosophy is incapacitation. Incapacitation is often seen in incarceration sentences, prison sentences, and then of course the purest form of incapacitation is the death penalty, where you take the offender's ability away to commit the crime by either locking him in a prison cell or taking his life away from him. We generally don't think about incapacitation on low levels, but we could accomplish the same type of philosophy with something like house arrest coupled with electronic monitoring. Anything that restrains or restricts the person's movement, ability to commit crime, would fit in this idea of incapacitation. But normally, again, you're going to see it with very long, harsh prison sentences and death.